Welcome to day 14 of our series through this book, Frameworks Roots by Paul Blackham. Day 14. Jesus is the original model for humanity. Jesus is the original model for humanity. And I think this is just great. It's so easy in this world, if people do think of God, for them to think of some distant divine being way out there and we are merely his creatures, mere mortals. Who have no real connection with God. But if Jesus is the original model for humanity, then that directly connects us with the very being and the nature of God. If we were made in the pattern, if we were fashioned in the pattern of Jesus Christ himself, then that immediately connects us into the very heart of who God is. We are made to be like, to reflect, to show off. Or in the language of the Bible, we're made in the image of Jesus, the Son of God. Now, humans are great. And many of us, most of us, would say that we appreciate that there is intrinsic worth, that there is inherent worth, obvious worth to each individual human being. That's just the way it is. Of course, people are valuable. But I'm not sure it's quite so obvious. For some, it really is. So those who fought for the abolition of slavery, why? Well, at least a part of it was because they saw that there were worth in these humans, even in these slaves. It's the reason why many Christians would not choose to have an abortion. There's intrinsic value in this yet unborn life that is already a human life. People speak of basic human rights. Why should there be basic human rights? Because there is intrinsic worth in people. They have value. But I'm not sure it's that obvious that everyone has that value. Because even if I ask the question, well, why? Where does this value come from? What is it about humans that they have value? Some would argue, well, it's living things, and so they would not kill any creatures. Those who are vegetarians or who push it further, and who are vegans, who would not take advantage of, make use of anything that comes from a human or from a living creature being. But some would say, well, no, it's just humans. Well, what is it about humans that gives us worth? Why is it that humans, is it just we're protecting our own? Should an animal think that there is intrinsic value to a human? And why is it that actually it's not so obvious to so many? There are plenty of examples throughout history, but even in our current day, where people treat others as if they have no worth or value, or whatever worth and value they have, it's much less than their own value or the value of someone else's. Not everyone agrees that there is intrinsic worth to people. And sometimes even in our own lives. I was reading this psychology article, and this professor was saying how actually we have incompatible attitudes within ourselves. So often we will go out of our way to fight for and preserve every single life. And yet at other times we're completely indifferent to the fact that people who could be saved are left helplessly dying. We have incompatible attitudes even in our own lives. There are people in our societies and in our communities who abuse other people, who treat them so terribly they could not possibly see them as having any worth, not in their actions anyway. Or when mobs get together and the mob mentality takes over, and the way we treat people, whether it's over the internet or in person, or vigilante justice, there are all sorts of ways in which we treat people in ways as individuals and as communities here around the world throughout all time, which shows that we don't believe people have intrinsic worth. It's really not that obvious. People despise the weak and send them away, treat them terribly. Why do we do that if we believe people have intrinsic worth? I want to suggest because it's not that obvious. It's not that obvious that every human being is valuable. Until we turn to the Bible. The Bible has a very clear answer as to why humans have intrinsic worth. Not because they in and of themselves are valuable, but because they are modeled after one who has infinite worth. We are modeled after the Lord Jesus. We are made in the image of God. We are patterned after him. He is the original model for humanity. This majestic, glorious King of Kings, creator of the universe, the Son of God. You and I are made in his image. Every human is made in his image, and so we have value because we're not just cheap imitations, some knockoffs, but we're carefully crafted by Jesus himself to reflect him. In Genesis chapter 1, think about the creation of the world. The Bible tells us that God made us in the image of God, in the image of Jesus. And then Jesus himself in chapter 2 bends down onto the ground. He crafts us carefully out of clay, out of the dust of the earth, breathes life into this man's nostrils, and so Adam, the first man, is made and created, and so us from Adam, all sharing that pattern and that image of the Lord Jesus. We have value, we have worth, we are glorious, and we are precious, and each individual person is that way because we are made in the image of Jesus Christ. He is the original model for humanity. And so it's not about your achievements. It's not about what you can do or have done in the past. It's not about your connections, who you know and who knows you, what celebrities or powerful people of influence and fame. It's not about who you know or who knows you. It's not about your money or your house or your car or what holidays you're able to go on, what fancy food you eat, what job you do. It's not about how pretty your face is. It's not about how healthy or perhaps how sick you are. That is not where you derive your worth or your value. That's not where you feel worthless. When you don't have those things, you are loved and you are cherished, you are valuable because Jesus is the original model for humanity. You are made in his image and you are modeled after him. Isn't that a wonderful truth? That Jesus is that original model, and so thereby conferring on us a share of his infinite worth and majesty. Not some vague answer, oh well, we just are kind of valuable because, no, because you are made in the image of God. And so let's glory in the Lord Jesus now, that archetypal human, the truly human one, and who ultimately shares his humanity and his divinity with us. Enjoy today. Enjoy other humans. Enjoy the Lord Jesus.